welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist video series. I am Phil Long, Precision Agronomy Advisor with Latham High-Tech Seeds. This week we're continuing our fertility discussion, talking about the two biggest values you're going to see on your soil test. So what are those? Hopefully you have a soil test nearby or can grab it and take a look at that, and you'll see that calcium and magnesium are really the two biggest values that are going to show up on your report. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. So how do we know what's right and what's not? Well, there's not really a set ratio or anything, or even a number out there. It's really dependent on your soils. It's going to be based on the parent materials in your soils and so forth. There's a lot of ranges to these nutrients, what's okay. Your soil test would typically say if you're optimal or high or very high and things like that. But in general, I typically look for around a 60 to 70% on calcium saturation. This is your CEC, so the base saturation shows up usually on the one side of the report. So the percent of base saturation by calcium is usually around 60 to 70 depending on your soil, and around 10 to 20% on magnesium. If you have if you have 20% magnesium or higher, you're going to have very tight soils. We talk about this quite a bit, and people mention gypsum. So gypsum is calcium sulfate. That's what's going to help aerate your soil, and the reason that does that is because that calcium is a much bigger molecule. So the more calcium in your soil, the more airy your soil is going to be, the lighter. The more magnesium, the more compacted, tight, heavy, ponding, things like that you're going to see. So those will always show up when you look at a soil test and you see where it was taken from in the field. That will always correlate and should make sense in your mind as to where each area that has more magnesium should be the heavier soils or more ponded. Typically you're probably going to deal with more compaction there. That's why you can use that gypsum to help offset that. So how do we get more of these in the soils? Well, usually we use pH to determine this. So if your pH is getting acidic, you're going to want to raise it back up, and that's when you want to look at calcium and magnesium, decide where those levels kind of correspond, and like I mentioned, kind of using that base saturation as a guide. And then you can decide, hopefully you have an option, but in your area, whether you use calcitic or dolomitic lime, the calcium or magnesium lime, to ramp that back up, get your pH back up, and also build the calcium and magnesium level a little bit in the soil. On the flip side, you can add calcium by gypsum without raising the pH. We talked about that a little bit last week as well. So let's just to kind of review, if you have too much of this stuff out there, it can also be a bad thing. That's why I'm talking about it today. I don't mention this a lot, but the Mulder's chart, you can look it up, Google it, find it out there. It's an interaction of nutrients in the soil. Calcium at the top is at the very top here, and it has a lot of red arrows. And what that means is that it influences how all these other nutrients are taken up. That's why this is so important. We don't talk about it a lot because it's a secondary macronutrient that's just automatically there in your soil, but it influences a lot of other things going on out there. Both of these can, if they're at too high levels, reduce the potassium uptake into your plants. So calcium and magnesium both are a 2+ cation in the soil, so they're going to hold on tight to that negative charge in the soil, whereas potassium only has 1. So if you think about that, calcium and magnesium are stronger. They're going to hold on tighter. They're going to kick potassium off of that soil colloid and not make it available for your crop there. So a lot of interactions in the soil when it comes to this stuff, but these two are very important. I don't want to overlook them. Just remember that next time you take a glance at your soil test, that those do have meaning, and you should be looking at them even if they're not something you're fertilized for on a yearly basis. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-877-GO-LATHAM or visit us on our website at lathamseeds.com. Thanks for watching this week's Ask the Agronomist.